car, dealership manager, kicks out. Keanu Reeves, unaware he is the new owner. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Keanu Reeves stepped out of his modest black SUV, the bright sun reflecting off the sleek luxury cars parked outside Prestige Motors, a high-end dealership he had recently acquired. Unlike his usual polished red carpet look, Keanu wore a simple gray hoodie, faded jeans, and sneakers, deliberately understated. He wanted to blend in, to experience how the dealership operated when no one knew who he was. As he walked through the glass doors, the sharp chill of air conditioning hit him, a stark contrast to the desert heat outside. The scent of leather and fresh wax lingered in the air, complementing the gleaming lineup of pristine cars under dazzling showroom lights. A small group of employees stood chatting near the front desk. Laughter echoed faintly, but it quieted as Keanu entered. His casual appearance drew subtle glances, the kind that weren't openly hostile but carried a quiet judgment. He could feel the shift in energy, the momentary silence, the flicker of exchanged looks. It was a feeling he was used to, though it still stung. From across the room, a sharply dressed manager, Susan, stepped forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Her tailored blazer and clipboard screamed authority. "Excuse me," she began, her voice polite but clipped, her sharp eyes scanning him from head to toe. "Can I help you with something?" Keanu smiled faintly, his demeanor calm. "Just looking around," he said casually, gesturing to the cars. Susan's polite mask slipped ever so slightly. "Are you shopping for a car?" she asked, her tone carrying a trace of skepticism. "Something like that?" Keanu replied, keeping his tone light. Her lips tightened and her posture stiffened. "Well, we catered to a very specific clientele here," she said carefully. "Most of our inventory requires pre-qualification." Keanu raised an eyebrow, sensing her assumptions but choosing not to react. "Interesting," he said, his voice steady. "Maybe you can recommend something?" Susan hesitated, her gaze narrowing. "Perhaps something more suitable," she said, her words cautious but loaded. Keanu's calm exterior betrayed no emotion, but internally he noted every detail, the judgment in her voice, the way she clutched her clipboard as if it were a shield. He glanced at one of the nearby cars, a sleek silver coupe with an aggressive design, and lightly brushed the handle. "Nice car," he said simply, meeting her gaze. Her brows furrowed and her tone hardened. "It is, but these vehicles start at 6 figures. Susan hesitated, caught off guard by his directness. "Well," she began, her tone measured but still carrying that edge of doubt. "Perhaps something more practical. We have a few pre-owned models that might suit your needs." Keanu chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. "Practical," he repeated, the word hanging in the air like a quiet challenge. Before Susan could respond, one of the younger employees approached her, murmuring something about a delivery. She excused herself with a quick nod, leaving Keanu standing there alone. As she walked away, Keanu's gaze drifted back to the sleek silver coupe. His reflection stared back at him from its glossy surface. A man caught between two worlds, observing a culture he had long since outgrown. "Practical," he muttered to himself, a faint smile playing on his lips. He had seen enough for now, but he wasn't done yet. Keanu stood motionless for a moment, his reflection on the silver coupe still staring back at him. The quiet tension of the room didn't bother him. In fact, he welcomed it. It gave him the space to observe, to understand. This wasn't just about Susan's dismissive attitude. It was about the underlying culture of the place he now owned. Susan returned shortly, her heels clicking against the polished floor as she approached with a list of pre-owned vehicles in hand. Her forced smile was back, but it was weaker this time. She held out the list, her tone now more measured. Here are a few options that might be more accessible. Keanu accepted the paper without looking at it, folding it neatly and tucking it into his hoodie pocket. "Thanks," he said, his voice calm but unreadable. Susan hesitated, clearly expecting him to leave now that she had done her part. But Keanu stayed put, casually glancing around the showroom again. "You seem good at what you do," he said, breaking the silence. The comment caught her off guard, but she quickly recovered. "Thank you," she replied, her tone slightly cautious. Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "It must take a lot to run a place like this. Managing the team, handling clients, it's not easy, is it?" Susan blinked, unsure of where he was going with this. "No, it's not," she admitted. "It requires attention to detail, understanding the clientele." "Understanding the clientele," Keanu echoed, his tone even. "And what kind of clientele do you think I am?" Her smile faltered again, and this time she struggled to hide it. "Well," she began, choosing her words carefully, "we cater to a very specific market." Prestige. The employees whispered among themselves, exchanging puzzled glances as they tried to make sense of what was happening. Keanu stood near the silver coupe, calm and composed, his hands resting casually in his hoodie pockets. Moments later, the glass doors of the dealership swung open, and a sharply dressed man entered. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair, wearing a tailored navy suit and polished leather shoes. His presence immediately commanded attention. The sound of his footsteps echoed as he walked toward Keanu with a wide smile on his face. "Mr. Reeves," the man said warmly, extending his hand, "it's great to see you again." Keanu returned the handshake, his faint smile carrying a hint of satisfaction. "Good to see you, Alex," he replied. The room collectively stiffened. Employees who had been watching from the sidelines now stood frozen, their eyes darting between Keanu and Alex, the regional director of Prestige Motors. Susan's clipboard slipped slightly in her hands, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm. Alex turned to address Susan, his tone professional but firm. "Susan," he said, "I see you've already met Mr. Reeves." Susan blinked, struggling to find her voice. I didn't realize." "You didn't realize he's the new owner of this dealership?" Alex finished for her, his words slicing through the tension in the room. The color drained from Susan's face. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Keanu's calm gaze met hers, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Alex turned back to Keanu, an apologetic look on his face. "I trust everything has been to your satisfaction?" Keanu raised a hand, stopping him. "It's all right, Alex," he said, his voice measured. "Susan and I just got off on the wrong foot." The weight of his words hung in the air, and Susan took a small step back. It's hard not to make assumptions. Keanu's expression softened slightly and he nodded. "I get that," he said. "We all have biases whether we acknowledge them or not. But here's the thing, trying isn't enough. We need to actively challenge those biases. We need to create an environment where everyone feels respected and valued." He paused, letting his words sink in. "From now on, this dealership is going to lead by example. Respect, inclusivity, and fairness. These aren't optional values. They're the foundation of everything we do. If anyone has an issue with that, now's the time to speak up." The room was silent, the weight of his message hanging heavily in the air. Keanu's gaze shifted to Susan, his tone softening just enough to be firm without being harsh. "Susan," he said, "I'd like to give you the opportunity to speak. Is there anything you'd like to say? All eyes turned to her. She hesitated, her voice barely audible when she finally spoke. I made a mistake, she admitted, her cheeks burning red. I misjudged you, and for that, I'm truly sorry. Keanu nodded, his expression unreadable. Thank you for saying that, he said. I hope this experience serves as a reminder, for all of us, that change starts with accountability. He turned back to the group. Moving forward, we'll be implementing training programs to ensure that this dealership reflects the values I believe in. Every customer deserves to be treated with dignity. No exceptions. There was a murmur of agreement around the room, louder this time, as the initial tension began to ease. Keanu straightened, his gaze steady. We're not just selling cars here. We're building trust, creating relationships, and representing something bigger than ourselves. If you're on board with that, I'm here to support you every step of the way. As the employees began to leave the room, Susan lingered by the door. She approached Keanu hesitantly, her hands twisting nervously. Mr. Reeves, she began, her voice low, I want to thank you for giving me a chance to do better. I won't let you down. Keanu looked at her for a moment, his voice steady. I hope you mean that, Susan, he said. Actions speak louder than words, but I believe people can change if they're willing to try. Susan nodded earnestly, and Keanu watched as she walked away, her head held a little higher than before. Turning to Alex, Keanu said, Let's schedule a team meeting next week. I want to ensure everyone understands what's expected moving forward. Alex smiled, nodding. You've got it, boss. As Keanu stepped back into the showroom, the sunlight gleaming off the luxury cars, he felt a sense of purpose. This wasn't just about running a business, it was about creating something meaningful. A place where people were judged by their character, not their appearance. And for the first time that day, Keanu felt truly optimistic about the road ahead.